Have you ever walked through a graveyard and been fascinated by the stories that the tombstones represent? I'd like you to walk with me for just a moment in a graveyard that touches this entire industry. It has cost millions of dollars to create. Thousands of lives have been affected by it. But unlike graveyards that we're familiar with, this is a graveyard that's unseen. The tombstones in this graveyard each have a story. And that story is one of heartache, wasted money, wasted time, disappointment, broken expectations, and hurt families. This is the associateship graveyard in dentistry. This is where 3 out of every 4 associateship relationships end up. Might I ask you, what is an acceptable failure rate? In an industry that prides itself in precision, in excellence, in near perfection, a 75% failure rate? 3 out of every 4 associateships end up in this place. Why? I mean, for crying out loud, if providers had 3 out of every 4 endophiles break, or 3 out of every 4 implants fail, would there be an outcry? You better believe there would be, because it's countable. They'd know on their profit and loss statement. They'd have patients coming back in asking for rework. But unlike this phenomenon, this isn't countable. All you have are broken-hearted owners and associates left to pick up the pieces, trying to start over again. Like one client who told me, he said, "Bob, why would I ever go down this road again, for crying out loud, when I get in a fight with my wife? At least we can kiss and make up. And then you know what happens after that." And I said, "I don't know, doctor. What happens?" He said, "I can't do that with my partner." I said, "That's probably a good thing." Why is it such a chronic problem inside dentistry? The true costs are unknown and unknowable, but they're very, very real. My interest in this comes from over 30 years of experience in business. I came into dentistry for medicine. I've been a hospital CEO and a surgical center CEO. I've dealt with business relationships my whole career in business development. When I heard for the first time that 3 out of every 4 relationships ends in this graveyard, I was floored, especially with an industry with the reputation that we have. So what do you have in this as members of ADMC? Why should this matter to you? Perhaps this isn't your area of primary focus, but you know what, everybody? There is a better way. There are solutions to this, and that's going to be the focus of today. What can we do to stop the phenomenon of providers ending up in this graveyard and instead enter into the sunlight of success? Well, as I've worked in the industry, I've determined there really are 2 causal factors, 2 key root issues contributing to this. Now, one is obviously this isn't countable, but that's not the real point. The real point is, number 1, this won't be a surprise, and providers in the room, you may want to plug your ears, but most dental providers are more introverted than extroverted. They would rather talk about things than people. They'd rather think than talk. They also happen to be typically perfectionists, and they studiously avoid conflict. Can you relate to that? You know what, you guys? For clinical skills, that's exceptional. For business, those can be killer characteristics. So that's the first reason. But the second reason, and I think this is the more profound reason, is the prevailing paradigm in the dental transition industry, which is short term. It's this: It's a model that deals with the deal, the contract, the transaction, and the project. They are compensated, and I don't mean this negatively at all. It's just the way the structure is. The compensation model is get the contract signed and get the deal done so we can go on to the next. But this has contributed significantly to this graveyard because it is short-term in nature and thinks only about this one piece of a literal process involved in taking a budding partnership and leading it to success. There is a new model, a new way of being able to handle this, that in my experience, but not just mine, in the experience of a handful of consultants that have chosen to use a more process orientation in this, they see that it works. And it actually tees these providers up for success. Instead of looking at the deal, it's looking at the partnership. Instead of looking at the contract, it's looking at the constructs of this relationship. It's not transaction related, it's transition related and oriented, and it is a process, a very clear process, but it works. In fact, it's a different paradigm. It's a whole different way of thinking about this animal called a transition, and you know what? It has a 90% success rate. Now, what's ironic about that number is I talked earlier about 3 out of 4 associateships fail. Do you know that of those 25% that make it into partnership, and then those that decide they're going to make a go of it, half of them fail in the first 5 years. So overall, as an industry, we have a 90% failure rate in partnering. What is an acceptable failure rate? It's not 90%. Now, we've heard that we should begin with the end in mind. Why partner when we have these dynamics going on? Let me ask I'll answer 2 quick questions. Why do it, and what does a good one look like? What are the net benefits of partnering? Primarily, there are physical and financial reasons to do this, and this is typically why associateships happen and why partnerships occur. Because of the net financial and physical gains that can take place from partnering. For instance, it can accommodate greater growth in the practice instead of plateauing. It accommodates further growth within a practice. We know that. It also establishes greater economies of scale. It can assist with coverage and time off. It facilitates an exit strategy. It also can expand clinical expertise and add to the profits and the value of the practice. Those are all great reasons to go into a partnership or to hire an associate. But they're not the only reasons. And in fact, if this is the only reason you go into this, it's not enough. There are other benefits that are more important, more lasting, and they become the glue of the relationship. And it's these, the social and emotional benefits of partnering. What are they? To use a term, it's synergy. It's where 1 + 1 = 3 or more. It's this unique fact that when you mutually share, teach each other, share the load, and motivate one another to excel, you get better. It also can create a greater, even performance-driven culture by having 2 leaders or 3 leaders at the helm. Terrific reasons to partner. Now, what is the formula for success? You take these net benefits. How do you derive benefits like this? I found 2 words. You vet and you set. Vetting is a phrase, well, let me go back for a second, assuming one important thing, that the financials of the practice are such that they can sustain more than one doctor's livelihood. This assumption is key. We don't have time to go in it today, but it's very, very important that as you look for the reasons why a practice would go down this path, you've got to ensure that either because of growth or exit, it's possible to have more than one doctor sustained by the practice. But with this assumption in place, vetting is the first step. What does vetting mean? It's a phrase that we don't really use in business. They use in politics all the time. It means to critically analyze something, almost to death. And often we use it in terms of vetting something else. No, we start with vetting ourselves in reality when we make this decision about entering into a partnering relationship. What do we vet? First, do we have a need? Secondly, are we ready for it? And third, is there a desire? If all three of those check off, then the most important thing that you can do in this vetting process to start with is to be able to actually establish clear criteria that then become your benchmark, your baseline for every single thing that you do, that a practice does as they pursue this new provider. You look at the clinical, financial, and cultural aspects of this individual, and you also see if they're a fit for the community. These become the baseline. And there are decision-making tools that can be used to actually make this a key part of the whole selection process. So first you vet yourself, then you vet the candidates. Now, where a lot of transitions end up in failure is they stop at this first line, the givens. Physically, do they plan to be in this community for a while, and can they financially handle the obligations that this may bring about? But there are deeper givens, deeper criteria that you need to vet. Just like the reasons that you enter into a partnership have to entail the social and emotional side, the reasons you hire an associate and how you vet that associate has to also peel back that onion so that you understand their core values. You understand their fit. And by that I mean personality style. You've heard the phrase opposites attract. In partnerships, nothing could be further from the truth. That doesn't mean they have to be the same. That does mean they have to complement each other. Then clear expectations. Upfront, understood in the interview process. And is the individual or individuals coachable? Are they hungry? Do they desire to do more? Do they want to learn? Having the team participate in the process is actually a very vital piece of this, because who is going to help them succeed ultimately? The team. Having their buy-in through the process of actually helping set the criteria, helping do the interviews, and giving their judgment to the doctor, even though the doctor is the ultimate decision maker, but having them be a part of it is really, really vital. And finally, once you've taken this all the way down to the process of having one or two candidates, do a working interview. If they have a license that will allow them in the state that you're looking to consider hiring them in, if they can come in and actually work on patients, that's great. But if not, shadow and actually do a lunchtime training for the team. See how they relate. How do they relate to patients? How do they show up? That's vetting. It's key. I learned the hard way about how important vetting is with one practice that I began to work with about 5 years ago. Dr. A was hired long before I started to work with them. He became a partner after 2 years of being an associate. The first time I met him, I thought, how on earth did you get into this practice? You don't fit at all. Fast forward 5 years down the road, their partnership ended in May. Extremely expensive, very, very painful, all because the individual wasn't vetted properly. Practice number B, though, was growing 10, 20% a year, extremely successful practice, actually in a very small town. We realized 2 years ago that the growth curve was such that you had to find an associate or you're going to just peak out. We went through the process, vetted the practice, vetted the candidate. Interesting to note, of the two candidates that were left in the end, the one the staff wanted and the one the doctor wanted were opposites. Team won. They were right. And that associate is now becoming a partner in December, and they grew 50% this year. That's the power of vetting properly. So net equals vet plus set. What does setting mean? Literally, it means setting up this new budding relationship for success. Think of it like teeing up a golf ball. You put that baby on the tee, and then you knock it as far as you possibly can. That's what setting is. You're setting up this associate for success, and you do it first by setting clear expectations. You did that early on, you do it now. Once they're inside the practice, what are the clear milestones and benchmarks that need to be hit, both in production, in management, in marketing? Then, training and mentoring is a key part of the whole process to see that they are given the training needed. I believe that practices should share in the CE that takes place for a new associate. At least 50% up to a certain level should be funded by the practice. You need to put your money where your mouth is and see that they have the tools and the skills and continue to grow in their capabilities. Next, communication tools, both communication and conflict. Extremely important. The communication tools refer to the protocols that are established with the team, the doctors, and the associate in terms of how we talk about this new associate, how we talk about any potential problems that there may be with this new associate, how we communicate to patients about the new associate, and then how you deal with any potential conflicts that may come around. You know what? May isn't the word. Will come around. It's inevitable. Those of us that are married or have significant others, conflict happens, doesn't it? It's teaching the skills to get over the conflict, to create something even better when you get through it. It's possible, and it's extremely important in this relationship. Establishing then 1 to 3 year goals. We talked about milestones and baselines so that it's very clear what the path is for this associate to get to partner and what it's going to take with actual go, no-go decisions along the way. Everything's on the table, no secrets. And that there's a clear preparation plan when the time comes and it appears that this is the person that you want to bring in as partner. They actually work through the operating documents. You work through the purchase and sale agreement. And you begin the process of having them talk about the business itself and how they are going to get along. Now, what does this mean for us? I have found for all of this to take place, it doesn't take place on its own. This budding relationship has to have a support system around it. Much like how you can plant a baby tree, but you have to stake it and protect it and water it and fertilize it, but over time it can be massive. The same thing with this type of relationship. It has to be protected. That's where we come in as consultants, to help facilitate this relationship that is taking place, to facilitate the establishment of these baselines and benchmarks, to help with the difficult conversations at first, and to teach them the skills to make this work. I suppose to use a phrase, it's being a marriage counselor for two dentists. I started talking about graveyards. If tombstones are the symbol of the dead, milestones are the symbol of the living, of the successful. Folks, for too long, we've added to this associate graveyard. It is time, and it's up to us in this room, I believe. It is time to turn tombstones into milestones and to change the way partnering happens in this industry. When we do that, we will have contributed significantly to the success of our clients. Thank you very much.